Welcome back, guys. This is Douglas Burns, your host with Culturally Creative Travel, and we're talking to Diana today with Collette Vacations. Diana is a tour designer, and we're going to be talking about what's involved in designing tours. Because I know from my perspective, I do a lot of custom itineraries for folks. I know how, all the little bits and pieces, and there's a lot that goes on. But to do it for larger groups like you do, and to put together itineraries, and you guys put together a lot of itineraries. You've got a really thick catalog of itineraries to choose from. But what's involved in that? How do you get started? What's the starting point when you're looking at putting together a new tour?
Sure, absolutely. It's a full-time job, and it's fortunately my full-time job, which is great. Where we start when we're putting together a tour is a lot of research. We look at the marketplace and see where are people going? Where are some of the companies that we compete with, or some of the new hot niche operators? Where are they going, and where are people gravitating to? And that's where we start to focus our attention. And from there, it's a lot of research. So a lot of time spent online reading every itinerary from all different operators, operators very similar to Collette, small ship cruise operators, big cruise operators, biking companies, adventure companies, and everything in between, and really trying to identify, all right, what makes this particular corner of the world so special? What are the red threads that we see through every itinerary? And then what are some of those outlying experiences that we're seeing down on paper that we may want to explore further? And so we take all of that and we just start to dive deep on it.
Well, and I know there's itineraries that are tried and true. They've been around for forever and a day that everybody likes to do, and you're gonna do Rome and you're gonna do London, and you've got those pre-annual, not pre-annual, but they're the favorites that everybody
Sure.
wants to go and see and do. But you've also got itineraries that, on some of your itineraries, you got some of those out of the way places. How do you go about finding what's unique, what's out of the way, what the average tourist may not know about?
Absolutely. So I'll be honest, our secret is the phone. And it's talking to people on the phone has become a lost art. And what we at Collette have gotten in the habit of doing is, when we are talking to a hotel partner or a restaurant partner or our local guide, we ask, hey, where do you go on kind of a staycation, or where do you go if you were just going to go away for the weekend? And they'll give us the names of these little towns, or, just a 3-hour drive from Rome is this great little hilltop town in Tuscany. Say, okay, let me write that down. And it's really just about asking the locals. And I'll be honest, in almost every destination that we visit, there are incredible tourist boards or CVBs, and they're amazing resources. And so they'll give you the big places. Okay, everyone needs to go to Madrid, everyone needs to go to Barcelona when they're visiting Spain. But they'll also say, hey, there's that really great wine region up there, and they just opened up a new hotel. Let me give you the name of the general manager. And so it's just about talking to people. And our CEO, Dan Sullivan, says all the time, play Socrates and ask a million questions. And it's incredible what answers you get.
That's fabulous, and it's. You're right. People don't think about picking up the phone anymore. We live in such a digital world, and everything's at our fingertips, and Googling has become a verb, right? I mean, it's
Exactly. Yeah.
But I love the fact that you go out and you're reaching out to the locals, and you're finding out what do the locals like to see and do.
Mm-hmm.
Because ultimately, I think, in my experience, that's where the best stories come from, is where the locals like to spend their time, where they like to go eat, where they like to hang out. And that's fabulous. Now, when you're deciding on this, and you go through that same process then to try to find the activities that you're putting together? Because here again, we're talking for Collette, most of your tours, I know you've got some small group tours that are like 20 people and under, but most of your tours are on the 30 to 40 passenger bus, and so you've got to be able to accommodate a number of people with a number of travel capabilities, etc.
Absolutely. So we do go through that same process for every vendor. And it's amazing what resources are available out there through talking to people, but also online. And so to give you an example, I was recently in Sarajevo, which is an incredible city, but that's a place where you need a really strong local guide. If you don't leave that city with goosebumps and having it left a mark on your life, you haven't experienced it correctly. So in researching how should we spend our time in Sarajevo and who do we want to work with to bring that city to life, we actually talked over the phone to 10 different local guides. And then we flew over there as part of a larger trip. And I met with 6 different guides to identify, all right, who's going to bring the city to life? And we finally met the right person that we thought, okay, we trust you, because our travelers' time is so valuable. And you need to make sure that you're making the most of it, and then also you're accommodating a wide array of interests. Sarajevo has religious history, it has modern war history, it has history going back to the Ottoman Empire, it has a great food scene. So we need to cater to all of those, because like you said, a lot of times we will have 30, 40 people traveling together. So who is that one person? What is that one experience that's going to bring everyone together and have an impactful takeaway for all of our travelers? And that's what we do. And we do that by going. At Collette, we say we know because we go. My team spends about 100 days a year on the road vetting everything so that when your travelers get there, it's flawless. It's already been perfected.
That sounds like a dream job to spend that much time on the road, visiting all these out of the way places and talking to all these wonderful travel vendors and hoteliers and activities coordinators, et cetera. I mean, I got to ask, how did you fall into this wonderful position that you have of being able to spend so much time being paid to travel and explore?
Absolutely. When I graduated college, I did one of those, not a backpacking year, but I took the summer and I went backpacking around Europe. And my parents, were in tears. They were so upset that I wasn't going into, Manhattan with all of my friends and getting a job at one of the big accounting firms or whatever. But I went backpacking and it actually paid off. I got to travel everywhere, and the seed of curiosity was planted in me. And from that point on, I started working in the travel industry and just kept traveling and kept being curious, stayed on top of trends, and just have such a passion for exploring our world. And one day I saw a job opening at Collette, and it all came together, and the rest is history. So I've been at the company now for 7 years.
Oh, wow. Never discount that gap year, folks. You never know. That gap year, you never know what it's going to turn into. That's, Rick Steves, who's a very popular travel television host and has done, some wonderful PR for the industry, and especially with his travels to Europe and what. He got started doing the exact same thing. He took a gap year. I think he took a couple of gap years, truthfully. But he went and backpacked around Europe, and that's where he started. So never discount that gap year. That's an incredible way to get started. Well, what sort of things do you look for then? I mean, we've talked a little bit of this already, but when you're building that itinerary, do you start with who do you think is going to be traveling first? Do you start with what kind of the activities do you like, and then trying to add then go backwards and match the traveler afterwards? How do you go about finding your sightseeing activities, and how do you make those decisions?
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that we do is try to experience destinations in new ways and also offer our guests choice. What we're finding is that people want to experience, let's take London, like a local and in a different way. The standard hop on, hop off bus tour is appealing to some, but may not be appealing to others. So what we do at Collette across almost every product line we have is we give our guests choice. So if you want to go on, a standard panoramic tour, half-day sightseeing tour of London with a local expert, we have that available to you. But if you are someone who really wants to dive into local culture and get into some of the quirkier neighborhoods that London has, we'll have that available for you as well. And instead of using a bus to get around the city, we'll use the tube, the underground there, and we explore that way. Because what we're realizing is people really do have different interests, and we need to be able to cater to all of them. If you're interested in Churchill's London, the Battle of Britain, and everything that happened during World War II in that city, we can cater our product to you, and it's all available. And so it's really just about personalization and flexibility. And so that is what modern and very forward-thinking tour operators are providing to their travelers, is this choice and flexibility, because the one-size-fits-all model is becoming increasingly difficult, I might argue impossible, to maintain. Travelers want personalization and flexibility, and companies like Collette are still providing it within the traditional guided touring space, which is...
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because with everybody, well, I won't say everybody, most people, when they think of an escorted tour, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is the old movie, If It's Tuesday, It Must Be Belgium, which is a fabulous movie. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's just a lot of fun to watch, but that's not modern escorted touring. But how do you, I mean, you are on a bus with, depending on the size of the tour, anywhere between 20 to 40 other people. How do you personalize a tour for that many people so that they've got those options and those choices to make that vacation their own?
Sure, absolutely. So let's say we're visiting a vineyard. We're in Italy and we're visiting a vineyard. You might assume, oh, well, everyone's going to like this, but maybe not. You may have some people that aren't into wine, or they live in Napa, so this is nothing new. What we would do for them is, when we're visiting that vineyard, you could do your standard wine tasting and really do a deep dive into the wine of the region with one of the family members that owns it. But often what we're finding is these vineyards also have other activities available. So you could do, on the same premise or just down the street, places like Italy, oh, it's so-and-so's cousin, let me just go right down the street. You can do a cooking class. Or maybe you can do a walk through the vineyard. If you're someone who really enjoys walking and being active, you go out with another family member and a local guide, and they'll explain to you the flora and fauna of the region that you're in. So just in a one-stop, 3-hour vineyard visit, you may have 3 or 4 possible experiences. We have another tour that spends a lot of time in Scotland on Islay, which is the whiskey capital in Scotland, but not everyone is into whiskey. So Islay is actually a huge cultural center for Scotland, and one of the few places where, Scotch Gaelic, the language, is still spoken. So if you're not interested in distilleries, then you don't have to go there. We actually have an alternative for you available. So and you can do this because we're slowing down the pace of our travel. What we're finding is the old school way of guided touring, one night here, seeing every site for 5 minutes. People don't want that anymore. They really want to slow down and have immersive experiences, have conversations with people, really make connections. And when you're slowing down, you're able to provide more experiences. And so that's what at Collette we've strived to do, particularly with our small group travel, because it is easier to facilitate these types of experiences when you have smaller groups, but not impossible for big ones either. And that's why I have a job. It's my job to manage the team that puts these together.
Well, I love the fact you're talking about slowing things down, because even for people who've done the big ship cruises and where you're only in port for maybe 6 or 7 hours, but you do the excursion. It's the excursions. You're off the boat for 4 hours and you're back in time for lunch. I've done the city tours where it's wave by at the whatever the building is, or someone lived over here. That's nice. We're seeing it from across the hallway of the bus, and the idea of being able to spend some time, I think it's so important for travelers that. I agree. That's where the industry is going, and the fact that y'all have embraced that as a company is a fantastic to hear, and I know that's going to resonate with so many people out there. Are there any special circumstances or considerations that you have to keep in mind when building a tour, whether it be for individual travelers or maybe itinerary choices? How long do you spend on the bus? What kind of special considerations do you try to keep in mind when you're putting together the actual itinerary?
That's a great question. We have a number. One of the most important things we've touched on a little bit is pacing. I again, a fundamental shift in the mindset of guided travel is this is a vacation. We used to say, oh no, it's not a vacation, it's a tour. No, it's a vacation. And you want to relax when you're on vacation. And so we have to be really mindful of that. The days of having people up and out at 8 a.m. day after day after day and go, go, go are very far behind us. People want to relax. So what are we going to include that day that is beyond impactful and extremely memorable, and I like to say life-changing? I think every experience that we have needs to be that impactful, but also get people to their next destination or back to the hotel in time to relax and have exploration opportunities of their own independently. So pacing is really, really key. I would say that's probably our biggest consideration. But then down to everything from dietary needs. Increasingly, we're seeing vegans and vegetarians, gluten-free on tour. And so we need to work with partners who are not only flexible to accommodate those dietary requirements, but also excited and willing to do it. So that's another consideration as well. And then, beyond that, one thing Collette prides itself on is always adhering to our brand standards. Going back, things change all the time. A hotel that was fantastic 2 years ago may have had a change of ownership, and it's no longer the same property that it once was. So staying on top of all of those, whether it's with restaurants, hotels, coach companies, to make sure that when our guests arrive on tour, everything is seamless and everything is exceeding their highest expectations.
Now let's talk about the hotel for just a minute, because it is such a big part of travel, and I think it's no longer, when you're on vacation, just a place to lay your head.
Right.
So how do you go about talking with, because there's a lot of hotel companies out there. There's the major chains, the Hyatts and the Hiltons and Holiday Inns. I mean, the really big chains that everybody knows. And then there's the boutique hotels out there that are maybe mom and pop run. What kind of considerations do you have to think about, and how do you go about finding the hotels that you end up partnering with for an individual tour? And along the same lines, what sort of things are you looking for in a hotel property for your guests and for those that, as a travel advisor, I'm going to want to send them onto? And here again, I recognize that some locations you may not have a lot of options. I know going to the national parks, there's not a lot of hotel options out there at the national parks, but you've got other major cities where it's a phone book couldn't hold them all. There's so many.
Absolutely. So what we look for, Collette, is that we consider ourselves in terms of hotels, a solid 4-star, probably closer to 4.5-star tour operator. So that really is the benchmark that we start from and hopefully are able to trade up from. And as you said, there are places like the Scottish Highlands, the national parks, where 4-star hotels just don't exist. So 4-star hotel is key, but then equally as important, perhaps even more important, is the location. Who is going to turn down an opportunity to sleep in the Grand Canyon? No one would. Being able to, wake up in the morning a little bit early with your tour manager and hike out to the rim and watch the sunrise, of course you're going to sleep in a more rustic accommodation to be able to do that, or to see the stars, in some of these parks. Again, to sleep on a small island, where it's just you and the locals. We sleep on the Aran Islands in Ireland, and there's not a 4-star hotel there. It's actually closer to about a 2 or a 2.5-star hotel. But people love that experience. It's the highlight of the tour. It's a family-run hotel. The kids are running around. So location is key, and that's whether you're out in the Irish countryside, in Vietnam, or in a big city like Manhattan. And then also what we strive for, particularly on our explorations tour, which is our small group line, are what I refer to as culturally reflective properties. Evermore, you can walk into a hotel and not know if you are in Boston, Beijing, or Belgium. They all look the exact same. I don't love that. Some people do. I don't love that. I want to know where I am. So we try and stay in, Morocco, for example, we stay in a riad, which is a family-owned, basically old merchant's house that's been turned into a hotel. In Ireland, we always stay in a castle. I want to have hotel stays that, as you said, are not just places to rest your head, but experiences in and of themselves.
That's fantastic, and I'm in 100% agreement with you. There are so many times, and this is not a ding at the major brands, but you go into a Hilton almost anywhere in the world, and they all have that same look and feel to it. And for a business traveler, that's exactly what they want, and that's what they need. But as a vacationer, as a traveler, I agree. I think you want to know you're in the country where you're visiting. You want Ireland to look and feel like Ireland. You want the hotel to look and feel like an Irish hotel, and feel like you've actually been there. And that's fabulous that y'all do that. When you're building your itineraries, and folks, if you've just tuned in, we're talking to Diana with Collette Vacations, a wonderful package tour operator with a multitude of travel styles and trips literally around the globe. And you travel. We're talking a lot of domestic travel for 2021, but you've got some wonderful trips to Europe, some wonderful trips to Asia, to Japan. Japan is Asia. I don't know why I said that twice. But I know you've got some beautiful trips to Africa. Almost anywhere in the globe that you want to travel to, Collette has a trip designed for you already to go, and it's there, and it's easy, and it's a wonderful way to travel. When you're putting together your tours, the order of which you're traveling, is always important. And sometimes if you're going between, I'm going to pick on the West Coast. If you're going between San Francisco and Seattle, you'll travel in the order that, the cities and the towns lay in between, which makes a lot of sense. But you also have a number of itineraries where, you've got, you may only be in one city. I know you've got a number of tours that are city centric, or that you've got some that are round trip to a particular city. How do you determine the order in which you're putting together your itineraries and say, we want to do this activity on day one, that activity on day two. We want to make sure that we're in this location at this particular point in time. What kind of considerations, what kind of thought processes go into putting that together?
Sure. So one piece of the puzzle that is key, and maybe giving away a little bit of a secret here, is
give away the secrets.
the day of the week that we're in a city helps with our costing. So the example I use is, if you are in Newport, Rhode Island, I live here on the East Coast. If you're in Newport, Rhode Island, or going down to Cape Cod, they don't want me on a Friday, Saturday, because they're busy on their own. They don't need me then. When they need my business is Sunday through Thursday. So Sunday through Thursday, I can head down there, and it's a significant reduction for me to travel at that time. So that is key when we're planning out where we're going to be when is the day of the week, because we're able to pass on those savings to our travelers. Why would I want to be in a place that's so expensive and pass on that cost to them, when actually the better time to be there usually is when all of the tourists have left? So if you're in Newport, Rhode Island on a Thursday, for example, or a Wednesday, those mansions that you want to visit are a lot less crowded, and there's a lot less traffic getting down there. So that's a huge consideration. And then also we have to be mindful of museums. A lot of people don't know, but if you're in Paris on a Tuesday, the Louvre is closed. On Monday, Versailles closed. So we have to be mindful of those things when we're picking the days of the week that when we're building our tour out and picking the days of the week that we're in each city. And then a lot of it, again, goes back to pacing. How can we spend the most time off the coach and in the destination that we're visiting? And we don't want We don't want death marches for any of our travelers. So we try to get them there as quickly and efficiently as we can, and then have their time be really enjoyable when they're there. So if you've been flying all day, flying all night, I should say, over to Europe, and you land at 6 o'clock in the morning, is having, going to the Cabaret Theater in Paris that evening going to be the best experience for you, because the show doesn't start until 8. You're not getting out till 11. Probably not. You're gonna be asleep there. So we consider all of these things when crafting our experiences.
That's fabulous, because you do need to be mindful, and having traveled to Europe, you don't keep your eyes open that first day. That first day, the only thing you want to think about is hitting the sack.
Absolutely.
What is different? Because we mentioned the fact that you've got the explorations, a smaller group, and you've also got the more traditional larger groups. What kind of differences thought process do you have to put in mind when you're designing trips for two different sized groups? Because it's on several of these, you hit similar locations. I won't say it's the same tour, because it's not, but it's similar locations for these tours. What kind of thought processes do you have to think about, whether you're designing for a larger group or for a smaller group?
Yeah, they're really actually very similar for the two. Collette espouses, again, the solid 4-star operator. We always want to include immersive experiences. We want, I said, we call the concierge and say, okay, well, what are the best restaurants? And they give us 5, and we say, okay, but where do you take your family when they come to visit? Where do you eat? We ask that question regardless of what product line we're designing for. So those local experiences, those very unique experiences, they are the same across all of our itineraries. Where we really, I would say, maybe take it up a notch for the explorations tours, which is our small group product line, is we are really diving deep into the culture. We are really, we don't want to just eat at a local restaurant. We want to do a full-on cooking class. We don't want to, just have a regular city tour. We want to do a walking tour that then incorporates a culinary component and taste the flavors of the city. And then we want to meet a local who maybe was part of some, resistance movement, or survived a war, or, helped build the city, or whatever it is, have those crafted experiences. So that's really where we take it up a notch for the small group tours. And in designing for them, for the small group tours, we really focus on, I would say, highly immersive experiences. So one that comes to mind is in Israel, we have dinner with an Orthodox Jewish family. And then the next day we actually go and you have an opportunity to travel into Palestine and to speak with both Hasidic Jews and Palestinians on the conflict that's going on there. And it's fascinating. And so it really is about having those in-depth personal conversations that can be a little bit controversial and a little bit, you take a step back and say, oh, I read about that in the newspaper, but now I'm actually experiencing it firsthand, and I'm here involved in this. And so that's really what we look to cultivate and design for on the exploration side.
That's fascinating, and you're making me want to go on that tour. And I'll be honest with you, Israel's not been high on my list for that very reason. But I may take you up on that one if you get a chance to talk to both sides of the issue. That's a fascinating way of exploring the country and exploring. That's something I don't think most people would think about doing on vacation. But what better way to experience what an area is like than to talk to the people who live there, and especially in an area where there is a historic conflict, and get the local perspective. I think that's an incredibly insightful thing to do on your trips. How do you go about tweaking those tours though? Because surely after, say, 4 or 5 years, that tour may feel a little stale. You've been there, you've done that. We know you have repeat clients who may want to go back and see the same region. surely you go back and you tweak these tours every few years. What's involved in tweaking? What sort of things do you look at?
Absolutely. So you have to tweak the tours. You have to stay relevant. Relevancy is the name of the game. So we have amazing survey data that we continually refer back to. And if we see that we're having a problem with a particular vendor, or if it's not meeting our service standards, we get on the phone and we have a conversation. And if it's still not meeting service standards, then we need to make a change. I personally and my team spend a large amount of time on the phone with our past travelers. There is no better feedback than from the travelers themselves. So speaking to them and hearing what resonated with them, what they value, what they wish could have been improved is so critical. And then making sure that we are constantly in the destination. There is a design team of 8 that are constantly traveling to the destinations that we visit, riding tours with the travelers and going and vetting everything, even tweaking menus. I had mentioned earlier that one of the considerations that we're now focusing on is a commitment to having vegetarian dishes on our menus, but also a point of feedback we got is people want to eat healthy on vacation. Maybe for the first few days in Italy, you have the gelato every night and the pasta all the time and the Alfredos and all of this stuff. But by, day 3, 4, 5, you want a healthier option. You can't eat a 3-course meal and all this heavy food all the time. So we've had to go back and really take a hard look at every single menu that we have to say, okay, are we meeting the needs of our travelers, because they're telling us that this is what they want. And that is the same for our local guides, for any experience we have. We actually heard recently in France that we have a farm visit there, and it's a truffle hunt, and our passengers wanted more time there. They absolutely loved it. And we thought, oh, okay. We thought, 2.5 hours doing this was enough, but clearly you want more time. It's what they want. And so we said, okay, great. And we tweaked the tour to meet that need. And I think that's a lot to do with people, again, are now more interested in sitting down, slowing down, having the conversation, talking to the gentleman that facilitates our truffle hunt about his life. How did he get into this? Can we go and look inside your house? All of these things. And that's what people want, and we just have to keep our ears open and listen and adjust as needed.
Well, I got to ask you, as you've been tweaking these tours, what do you see trending? What are the current trends? We've talked about slowing down as being a major trend with Collette Vacations and in travel in general, and I have to agree. I think it's slowing the pace down so you don't feel like you're rushed through the whole trip. But what other trends should we be seeing, or what other trends are you seeing within travel and within touring that people can be looking forward to?
Sure. One thing is a huge emphasis on culinary. People really want to eat and drink well while they're in destination.
I want to drink well while I'm at home.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Even at home. But, you can no longer say, oh, there's bad food in Ireland. Everything's boiled. It's not. And there's great food in Ireland. And so, people really are committed to culinary, whether it's, just eating at a great restaurant or going to the farm, going to the vineyard, going to the distillery, or even having it be a part of how they explore a city. We just added a food tour, speaking of Ireland, to Galway, because what we realized is, we have a standard city tour in Dublin, and we give our passengers the choice if they would like to do that on a motor coach or if they'd like to do that on foot with a local guide. But when we get to Galway, we realized, well, people don't want another standard city tour because they already have that in Dublin. So how can we explore the city differently? And we found a culinary historian who takes us through the city and explains the history of the city through food. And it's absolutely fascinating. And so you're still getting all of the history, but you're just eating while you do it. And I thought this is so fantastic. So culinary is huge. And then again, a diversity of exploration. We're finding that people want to get off the coach in major cities and kind of have thematic exploration. You know, when we are in certain German cities, people want to talk about, you know, Munich, for example, they want to talk about World War II and, you know, the Nazi architecture that's there. And they want a tour that might actually be themed towards that. So we'll offer that as a choice. And then we'll offer another track for people that aren't as interested. But having these highly themed city tours is another trend. And then lastly, I would say, Douglas, is a commitment to diversified transportation. Increasingly, at least on Collette tours, and I wouldn't be surprised on other tour operators, people want to walk. They want to take the train between cities. They want to bike. We have a lot of biking options. You don't have to bike because biking's not for everybody. But we have a lot of tours where you can do your city tour on bike, or you can bike to the next destination. You don't have to take the train. And everyone said, no one's going to do that. That's not for Collette. We have so many people that do it, and they absolutely love it. So it can be, as I mentioned earlier, taking the London Underground. In Vietnam, in India, if you don't travel via tuk-tuk, then you haven't really traveled in India. You haven't been to India. You just got to do it. And so instead of hopping on the coach to go to dinner, we hop on a tuk-tuk. And the same thing when we're in St. Petersburg in Russia. Instead of traveling the city and doing your city tour there on a motor coach, we put everyone in these really cool vintage Soviet cars. And that's how you explore the city. So getting people, again, off the bus and exploring in different ways, whether it's in an old car, on your feet, riding a bike on the back of a bike, whatever it is, really just thinking differently about how we experience destinations.
Incredible. And it's what some wonderful things to be looking forward to that's coming out and coming new. So, I mean, really, we need to spend more time really delving into those itineraries and saying, we want to explore the region in this particular way and what's new. Speaking of, what new things can we be looking forward to from Collette in the next year or two? What are you excited about offering that's new for your travelers?
We have some amazing new tours. We have one to, you're going to probably laugh, but we have one to Maine. That is my favorite, one of my favorite tours at Collette.
Now you have already have several tours that go to Maine.
We do, and this one is just Maine. So people ask, where do you go on vacation? And the answer is Maine. So I love Maine. I think it's fantastic. So we have a tour that just goes to Maine, a region that we're actually seeing trend like crazy is the Balkans. So I had mentioned that I was in Sarajevo not too long ago, but Croatia, Slovenia, heading down into Bosnia. It's no longer the war zone that it once was, and it's an incredible, incredible destination. Montenegro, that region is very much trending. Switzerland, we're seeing do very, very well. And then Ireland. Ireland is such a wonderful destination, and we have so many unique itineraries that really get you off the beaten path. I make sure to get back to Ireland annually for my sanity. I think it's just one of the greatest places on earth, and the people are wonderful. So all of those destinations are trending. And actually, one last one that we've sold out almost every single date. We still have a few seats left. Is a new Northern Lights tour that we have that goes to Alaska, and you can also see the Iditarod when you're there, which is one of the last great races. And you don't.
Which I know is also sold out for next year already. I've noticed. So if you're wanting to do the Iditarod tour with Collette, we need to be looking at 2 years in advance to get you on that tour.
It's an amazing, amazing product, and you don't need a passport. It's all right here. And Alaska, there's no bad time to go to Alaska. Summer, winter, fall, it's just such an incredible destination, one that people routinely go back to. And being able to experience all that is so great.
Well, speaking of Alaska, I've got to ask, when are you going to add Sitka to one of your Alaskan itineraries?
Yep, I've heard that name a lot, and I actually think very soon we are really looking to add some more itineraries and more product into Alaska. And Sitka is a destination that we have been pushed from so many people to get down to. So hopefully soon.
I know it's the problem with Sitka, and I've been there. It's a gorgeous city. If I were going to live anywhere in Alaska, that's where I would live. But getting there is the problem. And I don't look for, you've got a tough job to try to incorporate that into an Alaskan itinerary. It's just because of the logistics of getting there, because it's only by boat or by airplane. That's it. Mm-hmm. You cannot drive there. Alaska is so beautiful, but it's just getting around that state. It's the last frontier. Let's be honest. Yep. Diana, I cannot thank you enough for joining me today, talking about, you really do have a dream job. And for anybody who says the dream jobs are not out there, yours is definitely it. I'm very envious of what you get to do, get paid to travel and see this wonderful world that we live in and share it with so many people and say, come with me. And that's what it's all about. Come with me and travel. Folks, this has been Diana with Collette Tours. They're a wonderful package tour company, and they're not like the old package tours. I guarantee you this is a immersive company that takes the time to help you explore the region where you're traveling, and they do travel the globe. If you've got any questions about any of the Collette Tour offerings or traveling anywhere else in this big, beautiful globe that we live in, please give me a call. My telephone number is 713-688-6793, or contact me through the website at culturallycreativetravel.com. I would love to talk to you about any of Collette's wonderful offerings or traveling anywhere in this world. Until then, I'll see you down the road.